Ladies and gentlemen, I have a game for you today. This is going to be the third or fourth or fifth ever game that DarkenedFantasies has ever played. He is the oof emoji. That's what we call it anyway. And we have him going up against Keyan, and this is once again a map, a new map, I should say. This is Brimstone Disco. It's taking me a second to recall that. That one is by none other than Knight of the Realms. We have representation of actually 4 frauds, if you count me doing the castover. So isn't that cool? Obviously, DF, a storied individual. He's been a part of the project for a lot longer than he's been playing the project, you could say, just based on the fact that his art assets, his icon wizardry, his extenders for the bullet extender, and we still haven't actually implemented the unit extender, which feels a little silly, but we have that as well from him. So he's got a storied legacy, an RTS legacy, you could say, that he's definitely holding up, and that's pretty epic. So we also do have a few other things to note here. This is a version that has been, well, Simulacra recently came into the picture because you see I made it so that you get 2 of them. And I did adjust a little bit of their cost and stuff, but they were by themselves very weak individually, I would say. Uh-oh, we have some workertism. Oh my god, BTFO by a worker. I never thought for a second that DF would lose a worker. How could he? But if he scouts this lattice, he might realize he might lose some more workers. Of course, he is going the tried and true gateway strategy. He'll even go ahead and drop out. Oh, no, that's a gas steal. I was going to say, I thought that was not a gas steal, but it is. It is a gas steal. And so at this point, this is pretty awkward. I mean, on this map, you don't even have a ridge in the main, so it can be quite powerful for gas steals. In my experience, I usually just end up, killing it with, I don't know, a Maverick or something, and then seeing what happens later. But that's usually because I happen to just random Terran quite a bit. We do see a silly Smooch. He actually would have won that trade. By 2 HP, it looks like. But he doesn't want to try his luck. So here are the Simulacra. And at this point, they still have 2 armor pen, which was an oversight for sure. So that has been reduced to 1. I don't think you can, realistically speaking, reduce their durability any further. Because if you do that, they just pop. So the point is probably to maybe make it so that, like, if they still feel too powerful in their current format, then it's probably pretty trivial to just, maybe increase the cost of the pair, so to speak. But that is a time, that is a subject for another matter. Right now we're talking about these 2 players and what they're doing. And currently they're doing pretty standard stuff. Although, instead of getting an extra gateway, DF here has opted for a Warden, and he is, as a result, going to be a little bit economically behind. He's actually getting a second one because he fears the vassals. He's been gated in. This is the only approach in from this angle. You can come down here, but this is funny. I'm not sure what's accomplished there besides revealing that one of the Dracadins is over there. But at this point, there's a Warden and there's another Dracadin. You just lose that fight every day of the week. It does take 4 shots for a Dracadin to kill a Simulacra. So you got to remember that. And yeah, I think, well, that will be found out, especially if he just walks into the Warden. So he loses the opportunity to get 1 split. And yeah, this is just instant hit. If Keyan was monitoring this a little bit better, then he would have actually, microed that a little bit. And it looks like a Zealot snuck out at some point. I didn't even see that being made. So maybe that's what he was dealing with. And in fact, I do see that one of the Simulacra has split. You can tell. So now 3 Dracadins moving out. Again, 4 is the magic number for this particular matchup. And, something I've noticed about DF, and you've probably noticed it too, is that he likes to build Dracadins, okay? He really likes to build Dracadins. I thought maybe it was a PvT thing, specifically. But he really likes to build Dracadins. And I guess they're probably solid in PvP as well, but he's a diehard Brood War aficionado. Just wants to spend all of his money. Actually, a 3rd Warden at this point, and maybe something that he might not yet be aware of is, of course, the pylons. You want redundancy pylons wherever possible, like every now and then, because otherwise you can just get focused down, especially if it's like a swarm of units. Because pylons in CMBW have half the shields of normal and only 2/3 of the health, like 1/3 less health. So that's quite a bit of a durability reduction. But they're half the cost and warp in faster. So there's not really too much of a concern of dumping 2 in a high value area. So anyway, we do have a Simulacrum army being made, and there's no gas being harvested just yet for Keyan, as he's still not harvesting from his aquifer. And yeah, they're just going to walk in and die, as you can see. Not very effective. Okay, they do get a single kill, but this was definitely not cost efficient. He even loses the last splitter on the way out. And so, yeah, he will be pursued at this point. I think he's got enough defender's advantage if he holds the ramp, but if they come through this area, he's then going to have to deal with more, potential pain. So I assume this will be a back and forth, just judging by the way that this is set up. There's not a crazy number of Dracadins, yeah. So, we don't hate it. We don't hate this situation for either player. This Simulacrum force should definitely be able to hold them off. And with Vassals, if the Vassals get focused down, obviously they enchant the units beneath them. So, and if they don't, they're just a little bit more of a nuisance. And so, yeah, we should actually see... Oh, look, he doesn't even confirm a kill. I think he may have actually split another one. Yep, there it is. So that's +3 Simulacra. Of course, there's no format for healing your damaged Simulacra in a game where you're just playing as Protoss. You need, like, Terran allies for that, right? So I think that's kind of interesting because it adds a neat little angle there. And also puts a hard cap on how ridiculous individual Simulacrums can be. I always say Simulacrums plural, even though I know Simulacra is like the approved plural. But it's something about the way that I look at language. I really I value consistency, and you can probably tell this with the way that I do like the naming conventions for Zerg and stuff, where there's like those suffixes. But I just think about it like I don't like Panoptis. I always say Panoptises. I know octopuses is actually technically correct, like it's a valid way, according to some fucking dictionary somewhere. And I just don't understand why people have to like add in a bunch of random exceptions to the way that like you decide how to pluralize something. So that's very silly. We do see some Dracadins catching some Vassals, and this is going to be, well, it could be potentially dangerous, but he has 5 Wardens in the base. I suspect these couldn't really do too much, but they might actually get owned anyway. I'm not sure. Like, the vision range of the Vassal is very small, right? They only have 5, whereas obviously the Dracadins have a lot more. So obviously Keyan should just fly away. I mean, he could fly to the right and he would take some hits, but he might still stand a chance of doing some eco damage. But yeah, at this point, he's just going to... One of them will die to spirit the rest of them away, and that's fine. So obviously, one base play from both players so far. We do have a Grand Library, a couple Grand Libraries now. A second one on the way. Atreus is out to walk amongst the rabble. Could say that they are Todds amongst insects. And speaking of insects, I should actually mention that I do have some more unit responses coming, including for the Phobos. And they have some interesting lines, especially for when they are attacked. They may or may not view it as just an insult. So check that out. Now, we do have a massing of Dracadins. People have called them crabs. People have called them spiders. Mostly crabs. Obviously, crabs would be more accurate, given the leg count. Only having... okay, there's a third Atreus about to finish. So he scouts a little bit over. I don't know if he's seen the Atreus just yet. Probably not. And so the Atreuses do have enough splash that they can pretty handily defeat anything trying to clump up this ramp. So this is a very defensible position. But behind this... this is a site that I'm familiar with. DF is going to go ahead and expand. And so the reason why I say I'm familiar with that is because I played a number of PvT games against him, as you'll know if you watched the previous castover. And I just think about it like, if I'm getting tickled, right, by a contain or something, I suspect my opponent is expanding behind it. And obviously some maps are better than this for others. But in this case, it actually doesn't seem like DF wants to focus the contain too much. He maybe is just counting that on Keyan not expanding, given this opportunity. And he would be correct so far. But considering you only have 1 gas in the main, you actually really want to expand. Like, this expansion represents a huge step up. It might even be, like, imperative, insofar as I don't know if you can respond. Like, the current version of this map has double gas and a lot of mineral nodes. And so I think if you have both of those things, the base becomes really, really important. And if it's not very contestable because it's super defensible, like the ground path is just one choke or through the main, basically, and there's decent air defensibility, although over here is not really. Yeah, I don't know. I look at that and I think like that's actually really difficult for Keyan to dislodge, and also if he doesn't have the base himself, he's kind of owned. So this might be a little bit too feast or famine for the average game, but also we have to account for player skill when we break these things down. And the fact that Keyan has, enough minerals to expand pretty much, but is not yet doing that is probably, evidence enough that something is amiss. I do always not look at the mineral only base over here, but I think if this were higher value, I guess I should reveal the map a little bit, because I started a castover on this and didn't end up releasing it. So that's why I didn't bother revealing the map and talking about it. But actually, we're going to see a little bit of a scuffle. So I'll hold my map analysis for scuffle analysis. Atreus will regain some shields. And I don't think there were any lethal damage dealt, although one of the Dracadins is pretty close to death. It looks like Keyan just wants to pull the trigger and attack. The 3 Wardens here will go down to the vassals alone. And and I say this is a big if, Keyan can actually get through with all of his units. Oh, you actually can go over here. Okay, I think that's unintentional. Then I think he should actually be able to shut this base down, which again is really important. We were just talking about how important the space seemed. If he can focus down the Nexus, then he might be in the clear. Or if he had maybe kept all of his Atreus's over in this direction. His army is quite divided, and I think he's just going to do a number on the... Not really on any of the workers. I see maybe 5 worker deaths, notably the gas is still mining. And so, yeah, he's going to score, a couple of more Dracadin kills. Nothing too crazy. He's got a single simulacrum left in the base, just tickling some workers to death, which is a nice added bonus. But again, the gas is still harvesting, right? You really want to be careful when attacking this with scribes. If this was microed, it would just split into hell, but it doesn't. So that's lovely for DF there. If that had been moved up and to the right here or something, maybe behind one of these mineral lines to reduce the number of scribes that could actually attack, right? Reduce its surface area, then that would have been pretty big. Now the Dracadin response force is in accordance. We do have some heralds out. Heralds really are high value if they manage to, obviously the biggest thing is that their passive debuffs enemies, right? He's actually doing him a favor by killing that warden, which is pretty funny. So their passive debuffs enemies, their on-hits debuff enemies, and for a short time, every attack releases a pulse of healing that specifically targets shields. And as a result of that, you want to sync them up with melee units, like Amaranths, obviously Legionnaires, which are being built. So at this point, the presence of the Heralds kind of comes a little bit too soon. I mean, it's great anti-melee, as you can see. You can see all those pulses happening. You could probably hear them a little bit too. But against Dracadins, they're not super stellar. It kind of comes before Keyan is able to get the rest of his composition online. And he's finding that the pathfinding in this area is not super good for ground units, which probably just means that we see a pivot to air. In fact, there is an Astral Omen in the background. And that could be pretty difficult to keep up with, right? I mean, both players floating a decent amount of money at this point. And no second gas mining here for DF, which we assume is what's gating a lot of his minerals. No expansion at all for Keyan, so he's definitely behind. But he could theoretically use his superior game knowledge and understanding of which units to build for which purpose. And, building a better composition to maybe take more cost-efficient fights, right? That's something that we can say, because Keyan's obviously been playing this for a lot longer than DF has. But at this point, right, DF does have an economic advantage. I think he's probably just more experienced as an RTS player in general. And so as he's dealing with the unorthodox map design, where all of the chokes are really small on this particular map, and only some of the bases are worth taking, then yeah, that would be something to think about. But this army, going head-to-head with his Dracadins, those will fall. It's just a matter of whether the Exemplars come out in time. And only one of them is being created so far. Sort of oh no, there's one out already. Okay. So there's no vassals to pursue that. Obviously, Exemplars can only attack ground units. But they do have AoE, which will be very brutal on this map, I feel like. So here comes the first Exemplar revealing itself. Heralds can attack air. Atreus's can attack air. Well, I thought Heralds could attack air, but apparently they can't. Never mind. I tell a lie. I don't know my own game. That's okay. With just the one Atreus, though, he can kind of zone that The Sims can obviously also do some pretty good damage here. And again, those Herald's passives, restoring the shields every time they get attacked, with fast attack speed units like the Simulacrum, is pretty good. Now, the Atreus goes down without targeting the Exemplar, but these Simulacrums are here, and they are going to pop it. Now, there is another one in the back somewhere, because it should have finished training by now. It looks like it will be on the way soon. No, it's actually not being rallied over. Instead, it's just going to be the 2 extra Dracadins. These are all very low. At least one of them was. The other one that was low died. So I think this army gets cleaned up, basically from both sides, if we're being real here. I think the one extra armor pen than intended is the only thing that's saving Keyan in this particular fight. He does have, he's ballooned up to now 800 minerals in the bank, and there was a much higher amount for DF, but he doesn't really have anything to fear. There's no kill threat. Had to take a sip of my coffee. You know how it is. I wish I had actually been looking at something useful while I was doing that meme, but whatever. And yeah, more Legionnaires. Not really anything out of the lattices. He's dropping some Wardens here to preemptively try to defend against an Exemplar raid. These are very, very slow. And as a result, I think you could see them get overcome. Maybe even, I want to say maybe even Atreus's move a little bit faster, but obviously they can move over, only over ground paths, whereas the Exemplars be a little bit better. Now, the range is 7 to the 7 of the Warden, so they cannot outrange each other, right? Which I think DF is finding out now. But he's only taken superficial damage, and that will heal up over time. I know some people believe that flash shielding is too strong, and I'm actually agnostic to whether that is the case, but it is one of those things where, you know, we got to sort of wait and see, I think. We got to figure it out. For me, I think maybe the most adjustment-oriented thing you could do is just have flash shielding go down a little bit in some of the cases. Like, the individual shield amounts can be reduced, and then you might have some value there. Now, in this particular case, the Atreus's, I should say, Atrii, will ward off the Exemplar, now taking it down to very low HP. And they should even be able to get a couple of kills here. Oh, they might actually kill the... Yep, they will kill the Exemplar. A little bit of a misposition there by DF. The rest of his army is okay, especially with these additional Dracadins, but at this point, even though the Herald is kind of like lagging behind here, but obviously the Legionnaires can stay alive for a very long amount of time as soon as they're, you know, debuffed by the Herald passive. And so I think that will cause consternation, like that, actually. I have been thinking about it, and I do think that it makes sense for Legionnaires to teleport to their own targets. Like, it's like a slightly saner design, and I don't think it would be that overpowered. I remember thinking for some reason back when I first made the ability, because if people don't know, the Legionnaire is actually one of the first unit concepts that I came up with back in 2017 or 2018 or something like that. Very, very old, alongside the Hierophant and the Shaman and the Cyprian, and I guess the Bactylisk would have been that back when it was called the Basilisk. So, yeah, anyway, all that said, it's a very old concept, and I remember thinking maybe it would be too overpowered if one Legionnaire could teleport to itself, to its own targets, right? I think now it doesn't really matter, right? Like, we think about it, and it's more like, you know, a single Legionnaire is not going to be not having crazy kill threat, right? So, probably just makes the design a little bit more coherent. That being said, there's a second Exemplar out, or a third, I guess, at this point. Only having one at a time definitely is hurting DF a little bit. I know he could produce more, but I'm wondering what he's waiting for. Judging by oh, he's got some prank rallies. He did tell me that happened. We circle back to the situation here, and actually, it will go down once again. The speed getting the better of him. Herald not able to defend itself, or to shield itself, I guess. You know, you combine Heralds with like Ecclesiasts, and you're really starting to sit like with a ridiculous amount of consistent damage. Like, one of the things about Protoss units is that they're kind of more poke oriented a lot of the time, or they're more like, hey, let me sort of attack and then like draw back away from my shields to recharge and stuff. And that's like a very defining characteristic of them, right? But if you want sustained fights, you need that sort of sustained unit, right? Like when the Clarion actually works again, we'll be able to use that. But we can also have stuff like, you know, the Herald, as you were seeing, which really extended the lifespan of his Legionnaires quite a bit. Normally, they're very squishy. That may have surprised some longtime viewers who know the strength of the Legionnaire, that they were able to stay alive for so long. But even like Zealots, Amaranths will also benefit from the Heralds. And then obviously you have Ecclesiasts, which do the same thing. Like, both of those units are very good at anti-melee, and they're also very good alongside melee as synergizing, synergistic property or whatever. We're getting pretty close to even bases now. Obviously, Keyan could expand at any time. Money's gone back down for DF, who has now erected even more gateways. He usually doesn't have any redundancy pylons, and I think you can see that here. So that will potentially come back to bite him, maybe in this game, maybe in later games. We shall see. Only 4 Wardens here means half of them are already down just to the Dracadin spam, and the rest of the army is not really in a good spot to respond. Now, there is a Stargate coming out. I think that Keyan expects a greater mass of the Exemplars coming out soon. And I think that means, in general, he's probably trying to prepare his own army of maybe Panoptises. I've been using land effects lately. I started using them, and I think they're really good in at least PvT because you get to shut down bunkers and similar things. But in this particular case, what we're seeing is just, we're seeing some rough stuff for DF's army. He just keeps moving over there, killing some static defense, not really too much eco damage. I don't see any scribe corpses here. And obviously there's plenty of minerals to go around. Keyan's still not taking this base. This one not really being saturated yet. A lot of micro happening just to kite this back and forth. And it was linked a little while ago in the server, actually, by Roland, who linked a guide that was like how to win games with 75 APM or whatever, something like that. And I think, honestly, that's pretty legit. Like, I mean, you need APM, right? You should micro. But if you can focus most of your attention on just building units, which is what DF tries to do, if you can just keep your money low, which is currently not what DF is doing, then you might be in a pretty good spot, honestly. Like, all things considered. If you can just keep your money kind of low and build a bunch of production structures, I think you can do a lot, even in CMBW, right? Like, that's a fundamental RTS skill. So, there will be continued back and forth here. And still nobody taking this gas. What is going on with this? I feel like I'm running a desynced version of the map, which has an additional geyser that nobody wants to partake of. Like, what's going on? I need to add a corpse for the simulacrum just so that I can indicate what's going on there. There is a Panoptis out, a second one just on the way now. I thought it had just finished, but no such luck for Keyan. And they are going to I think is he thinking about exploring the space? There's nothing being set up down here, obviously, but time will tell. Something that you can tell that DF maybe is unaware of is how important gas actually is, and so he's not really harvesting gas from the third expansion, which would be like the immediate thing that you would always focus down. Now, the front line is on, but there's no Herald this time around, so I think they will have a much harder time. There are some Amaranths, which definitely stayed alive for quite a bit. But where's the rest of the army? Keyan somehow not really spending much of his money here. And I think he needed to attack with the Panoptises with that army so he could kill the Exemplars specifically while he dealt with the Dracadins separately with the ground army. At this point, maybe he can make a final stand. And actually, he is starting to take the third behind this. I don't think that the Dracadins are going to find their way there. They are kind of spinning right now. Don't ask me why. I think it's because, like, these two Dracadins, one of which was under the Exemplars, were, like, perfectly placed, and they couldn't figure out their way to get through that. That's called Tism. We do like a little bit of Tism here and there. But I think DF is going to take this game. I'm almost certain of it, actually. The Panoptis raid could go pretty poorly here. In fact, he is just going to snipe the Exemplars. Oh, he changed targets slightly, and that means he's not even going to get the second one. That's really, really poor micro. And he's definitely... I mean, I can't say that he's going to get punished for that. That is not what cost him the game. But this morass of Dracadins, this just non-stop Dracadin army. Dude, DF finds victory with the Dracadin spam, finally. I say finally, I don't know if he played games that before that I was not aware of, but this is funny to me. You know, most of the time I try to think about it like, you have to, you kind of need to win with a mixed army, right? You want to win with an army that isn't just one unit. But you know what? If you can, macro well enough, if you can have an economic lead over your opponent, then you can do wonders. And you know what? We're finding that out just now. So there you go. That will be GG for sure. Keyan simply cannot hold back the tide of Dracadins. There's going to be more coming down his front door. More being made in the back. Another gateway. No sort of tech. Not really even producing much from the Astral Omen or anything. The GGs are called, and we get to see the colored text messages, which were a recent update alongside the Witness Mode UI. And we get to say, hey, look at that. Let's check out the score screen. I'll actually comment on it this time. We see a lot of units being made. We obviously have... oh, by the way, the colors are fucked up in the score screen. In this case, I think because something to do with the Witness slots or something. I believe. I can't say that for certain, because this was fixed a while ago by DF2, but for some reason it isn't fixed here. Anyway, not really that relevant. We obviously see that there are 162 units produced. There were more units produced for Keyan. I do believe that the splitting sims count as a produced unit, and as a result, obviously, that makes sense for why he produced more. He obviously was producing, like, spamming units anyway, right? He was building sims, he was building, meleeers or whatever. But killing so many is quite an accomplishment there, and couldn't overwhelm his Protoss opponent with so many forces, unfortunately, for Keyan. And obviously, DF even building more structures. This is probably a lot of additional gateways and stuff over time. On the resources side, you can kind of tell that there was a clear economic advantage here, especially in the gas mine department. Although I'm still kind of puzzled as to why neither of the players decided to take the second geyser in the natural. Maybe at some point DF did that and I wasn't looking, but obviously we know that Keyan didn't because he lost his natural before he took it. So there you go. That's that. That was the game. And that was the quick cast over this time around. Welcome to the game, DF. Obviously, Meska had your first couple games, but and I welcomed you by playing them. But welcome to the game. Happy to have you, buddy. And yeah, the fraud conclave grows, I guess. The fraud clave grows in size. And maybe we finally have a dedicated Protoss player as well, because we were thinking before we don't really have that insofar as like a player of the relevant skill level who's just nothing but grinding Protoss out and trying to figure things out. But of course, at this point, DF is only interested in Dracadins. We'll see if we can make him feel a little bit differently over time. And we'll see if you can, I don't know. I was going to say something about building more than just Dracadins too, but I think that's probably my comment for this video, and I don't want to repeat myself too much, so I'll just end the video.